Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Felicia. I'm a Nigerian YouTuber based in Lagos. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I create content around fashion, lifestyle, sewing and DIYs. So if you're interested in any of these things, please do well to click on that subscribe button and join this gang. And to my returning subscribers, thank you so much for always coming back to watch my videos. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to make a corset pattern. The first step to creating a good pattern, whatever pattern it is having the right measurements so as to have the right fit. If you are yet to learn how to take measurements, or you just want to know how I take my measurements, please do well to check the video in the description box so that we are on the same page and so that we can create great things here. In today's video, as I was saying, I'm going to be showing you guys how to make a corset pattern. Every corset, depending on the style you're going for, will be different. I'm going to be showing you guys in this tutorial the common corset cups and the shapes that are commonly used, but that doesn't mean that you can't play around with yours, okay? So I'll be showing you just the front bodice of this corset. If you like to also know how to draft a back bodice of a dress, I'll also leave a link in the description box for you to check the back pattern out. I won't be doing that because it's basically the same thing as that video, so do well to check that out as well to see how to draft the back bodice. So a bodice is typically the length from the shoulder to the half length front. The half length front is the slimmest area of the waist. I'm just going to be drafting my pattern up to the slimmest area of the waist, which is usually called the gown waist. Yeah, if you're interested in seeing how I make a corset pattern, please do well to keep on watching, okay? To start this pattern, you need to decide what kind of cup pattern you're going to be using. So depending on the style you're going for, these are the three kinds of cup patterns you can have. So the first one here is the one with the 3 lines, and then the second one I'm putting up right here is the one with just 2 pieces. And then the third one also 2 pieces but in a different direction. So these are the 3 major cup patterns. So depending on what you're going for, we're going to be working with either of these 3. But for this tutorial, I'm going to be using the first one, which has the 3 pieces. So for this tutorial, within the bust measurements, I'm going to be using 39 and I divide that by 4. My under bust measurement is 33 divided by 4, half length front 32 divided by 4. And then I'm going to be needing the shoulder to bust, shoulder to under bust, shoulder to half length front measurements. I don't divide that. My shoulder measurement is 15, I divide that by 2, and my armhole is 20 divided by 2. So now the first thing I'm going to be doing is to mark my shoulder measurement divided by 2, which is 7.5. And once I've marked that, I'm going to go on to mark the lengths. So I first mark my shoulder to bust length, my shoulder to under bust, and my shoulder to half length front, which is 11 inches, 14 inches and 16 inches. And I'm going to mark another point so that I can just have a straight line. So now I'm also going to mark my armhole measurement divided by 2. This is going to serve as my chest line. Once I'm done with that, I'm just going to connect the points in straight lines. The next thing to do now is to label my line so that I know exactly where I'm putting everything on. So the first thing to now put here is my bust measurement, which is 9.75, and I just showed you what that is on the tape. I'm going to be marking that on the chest line, and then I'm going to go on the under bust line and mark my under bust measurement divided by 2, which is 8.25, and then my half length front, which is 8 inches, and I'm just going to connect those points. Now I forgot to mention that you need your apex measurement, which is, I'm going to be using 7 inches, and that's 3.5. I'm going to be marking that apex measurement on the bust line. From the beginning of my paper, I'm going to just mark 3.5 on the bust line and also on the half length front line, and I'm going to connect those 2 points together. This is my apex line. So your apex is also called darts. So on this apex line, I'm going to determine how many inches I want to use for the bust tightening. So depending on how busty the person is, I may be using 2 inches, 2.5 inches, 3 inches, 3.5 inches, depending on how busty my client is. So for my client, I'm going to be using 2.5 inches. So on the right side, I'm going to be marking 1.5 inch, and on the other side I am going to mark 1 inch, which makes it a total of 2.5 inches. Once I'm done with that on the half length front line, I'm going to mark the same thing on my underbust, 1.5 inch on this side and 1 inch on the other side. Then I'm going to connect those points. Next thing to do will be to use a curved ruler to connect these 2 points I just marked to the bust point, like this. So this right here serves as my dart, and this is going to help to shape in the bust area. I'm going to replace this dart on the other side so as to make sure that I have enough fabric to go on the circumference. So this 2.5 inch I've taken off on the inner part of the pattern. I'm going to be replacing it on the side like this, 2.5 inch on the half length front, and also on the underbust line, 2.5 inch. So once I've marked that, I'm going to just connect that point back to the chest measurement. So now that serves as my side front, and this middle part here serves as my center front. The next thing for me to do is to mark my shoulder slope, which is coming down 1 inch on that shoulder line right there. And then I am going to use my curved ruler to connect my chest point to the shoulder point in a curve like that. Then on my bust line right now, I am marking 1 inch inward on the bust line, and I'm going to be using my curved ruler to connect the 1 inch I just marked now to the under bust point like this. And then I am going to also go on to mark my bust radius. The bust radius is the difference between your bust and your under bust, and I have 3 inches, but because it's a corset and I like to give more room, I'll use 3.5 inches around that bust point, just like that. So now the next thing to do is now continue with the shape of my cup. Okay, usually you can follow this radius marks, but I like to go out 1 inch from on the bust line. I like to go out 1 inch from the bust radius to connect back to the under bust like this, and then I'm going to just mark that all the way up to the armhole, and then mark my neckline. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to continue with the bust tightening. On my bust line, I'm going to go 1/4 inch on both sides of that bust line, just where the cup is going to be ending. I'm going to do that on the other side as well, just like that, 1/4 inch, and I'm just going to connect the 2 points back to the bust point as I am doing so. So once I'm done with this, I am going to now mark my darts also on the top of my cup. On that shoulder line I just drew up there, I'm going to mark 1 inch on one side and 1 inch on the other side to tighten that area of my cup. So I'm going to also connect all this back to my bust points as I'm doing right now. Once this is done, I'm going to just now mark my new waistline. Usually you have to come up half inch on the half length front line and then connect it back to where the dart ends. Once I'm done with this, I'm just going to cut out my pattern up onto this point and then cut out the darts that I have marked at the center of my pattern. And then remember that I'm going to be using these 3 pieces of cup. So I'm just labeling my cup 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to be having 5 pieces of fabric just for the front bodice. And once I'm done with this, I'm going to close those 2 darts on the bust line. By closing it, I'm just going to cut up open one line and then use my tape my sticky tape to just hold those 2 points together like that, closing up the dart. I'll do the same thing on the other side as well. Cut one side open and then close the dart up by joining it back with a sticky tape. Now I'm going to also close the top line, but before I do that, I'm just going to cut open that shoulder line and then cut off the darts on one side and then place it back together exactly where it's supposed to close up, just like this, making sure that I'm meeting back on the bust point. I'm going to close that up with a sticky tape. Once I've done this, you notice that my neckline is now, I need to balance it out, so I'm going to create a new curve just to blend it back to where it's supposed to be, just like this. With my curved ruler, I'm just going to reconnect that to cover up for that gap. Once I've done that, the next thing for me to do is to mark 2 inches from my new neckline of my cup downwards. So 2 inches from that line, I just reshaped 2 inches downwards. I'm going to just mark that and then create my first piece of my cup. So my first piece, I'm just going to cut out my first piece and then separate the second and the third piece, just like this. So right now I have 3 pieces. I'm just blending the sharp edge of that third piece, and this is what I have here. My first piece, second piece, and then the 4th and the 5th piece of my corset, which I'm all going to join back once I'm done cutting. Now I'm going to go on to show you guys another method if you want to come up a bit more on the neckline. On that shoulders line, I'm going to just mark the middle points. I have 9 inches here, so I'm going to mark 4.5 inch on that shoulder line, and then on the neckline area I'm going to go down as deep as I want. For this pattern, I'm going to be using 8 inches on the neck area, which I'm doing like so, and I'm going to come in 1 inch from that 8 inches that I just marked. Once I've marked that 1 inch point, I'm going to connect my neckline right now to the shoulder line, the halfway of the shoulder line I marked earlier, just like this. This will help for those who do not want to have so much cleavage, or people who are making an off-shoulder corset, or those that still want to go on to use a yoke on the shoulder to cover up. So I'm just pretty much doing the same thing. Once I have come up a bit more on this pattern, I'm going to be doing the same thing as I've done before. Mark my bust radius round from the bust point, 3.5 inches. For this pattern also is still 3 inches, so I'm just using 3.5 inches round like I did with the first one, and I'm now going to go on to shape the cup as I did for the first one as well, shaping the cup up to the armhole area, marking my darts on the bust line and also on the top bits, and then I'm marking out my first piece of my cup pattern. So this is what I have. I've gone on to cut out the pattern totally, remove the dart on the lower part of the bust, and then cut out my 4th and 5th piece, and then I'm closing up the darts as I did for the second piece, and closing up the darts on the 3rd piece. And then cut open my top dart, the upper part of the dart, I remember to leave some more paper, but I'm going to be correcting that by putting another piece of paper underneath so that I can blend the neckline. So once I've reconnected that, I'm just going to mark my new neckline and then reshape my first piece and then cut out my first, second and third piece for the cup. Once I'm done with that, I have this other pattern, and this one would be give more coverage than the first one. The first one is a tube corset, so definitely you have a lot of cleavage showing, but for this one you have it coming up, and you can as well also put a yoke towards the shoulder so that it's a full dress and not just a tube. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Leave me comments in the comment section if you want to see more, and let me know if this was useful to you. Okay, bye.